Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us today to hear about the next 5-year update to the Upper East Coast Water Supply Plan. My name is Tom Cullios, and I'm the Water Supply Planning Section Lead at the district, and I'll be the moderator for today's stakeholder workshop. This Zoom meeting is being recorded, and within a few days, the recording will be made available to the public. The presentations you see here today have been posted to the district's Upper East Coast Water Supply Plan website if you want to view them again. Before going into presentations, South Florida Water Management District Governing Board member Mrs. Jackie Thurlow-Lippisch is participating in today's meeting, and I'd like to ask her if she has any opening comments, if she's on the line and available.
Hello, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Great. I'm on a boat, just passing Roseland in the Indian River Lagoon, so it might sound a little loud, but it's beautiful this morning, and I have been inspired passing through Martin County, St. Lucie, and now Indian River County, seeing all of the wildlife. A giant ray jumped out of the river this morning. And this area is so well known for all of its citrus, and John's Island and Orchid Island. I've been reading the history, and it's so interesting to me, the connection between the love of wildlife and the love of agriculture that has always been intertwined in this beautiful area. And it is my wish that we can honor both through conservation. And thank you very much for letting me be part of this important work today.
Well, thank you. We appreciate you participating in the stakeholder workshop today.
Thank you.
So the stakeholder workshop will have 3 presentations. Next, thank you. The City of Port St. Lucie Utilities, East Coast Florida Model Overview, and a summary of the draft 2021 Upper East Coast Water Supply Plan update. We asked the City of Port St. Lucie to speak today about their utility because they have the largest population in the planning area, and they also have a progressive plan to use alternative water supplies that will meet those growing demands. Rob Earl gave a detailed presentation of the East Coast Florida model in July. So today he will present an overview of the model. He will summarize the results of the updated simulations of existing and future groundwater conditions with the estimated and projected demands contained in this plan update. Then Nancy, the Upper East Coast Plan Manager, will summarize the content of the draft 2021 Upper East Coast Water Supply Plan update. She'll go through the draft plan to provide you with a summary of the content in each chapter. Under the Zoom format, all attendees are muted. However, we still want to hear from you. We will have a question and comment period after each presentation, so please hold your questions until the end of each presentation. Your comments and thoughts are critical to ensure the 2021 plan update addresses your issues and concerns, so I encourage you to share those with us. Okay, I think it's important to tell you a little bit about water supply plan requirements and to give you some background information. The district has been divided into 5 planning areas as indicated on the map, basically around drainage basins. The development of plans for every region is staggered since the same planning team works on each one. The dates on the map represent the next update for that region and when it's due. The Upper East Coast planning area includes all of Martin and St. Lucie counties and a portion of Northeast Okeechobee County, shown in the purple area. As you can see on the graphic, Lake Okeechobee touches 4 of our planning areas. However, Lake Okeechobee is formally included and addressed in the lower East Coast Water Supply Plan, which will be updated in 2023. Legislation was passed in the late 1990s requiring water supply plans to have these elements listed here: demand estimates and projections for a 20-year period, source options, resource analyses and identification of issues. And in addition, the plan must contain water resource and water supply development projects. And finally, the planning horizon for this Upper East Coast plan is 2019 through 2045. There is a local government connection between regional and local planning. Local governments are required to update the water facilities element of their comprehensive plan within 18 months of approval of the district's water supply plan. This means that those water facility work plans will be due by May of 2023 and identify the projects that are planned to be developed. Annual status updates on those projects is due every November. I'd like to remind panelists to remain on mute throughout the presentations. After completion of each presentation, I'll have these instructions shown here for comments and questions. Does anyone have any questions or comments about what has been presented so far? If you do, you could raise your hand. Okay, looks like Joshua Miller might have a question.
Yes, Mr. Colios, how have you been? It's been a little while. Quick question on the water supply work plan updates. I believe it's required every 5 years, correct? But in this situation, even if we just recently renewed it, we're going to have to renew it again in 18 months.
There's probably some leeway on that. We could talk about that, about the specific circumstance that you're talking about. But I think, you know, if the water supply plan changes something or lists a different project, you might still have to do an update.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else with questions? Okay, I'm not seeing any. No raised hands. With no questions then, the City of Port St. Lucie can proceed with their presentation. We'll advance the slides for you. If Chris is ready to do the presentation. Go back to the participant list, please.
Yeah. Oh, there's a handout.
Oh, Brad, are you going to do the presentation? If Chris is with you, we need to unmute Brad Masick, please.
Hey, Tom, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Hey, yes, we really appreciate the opportunity to be able to tell our story. On behalf of the city, James Christopher, Vice President of Tetra Tech, is going to be doing the presentation for us. Actually, I've worked with James for the past 25 years, and he was very instrumental. Actually, his group put together the master water supply plan, so I thought it would be appropriate that he would run with it. And he should be on the line. So with that, I'll turn it back over to James. Thank you again.
Thank you, Brad.
And thank you, Brad. I'm James Christopher with Tetra Tech, and recently we completed a water supply plan for the city of Port St. Lucie, and I'd like to go through a little bit of the background of the utility, talk a little bit about the planning process, and then talk a little bit about the future plan. So if we could have the next slide. All right, and we can skip this. So a little bit about the utility background. If we go to the next slide. Obviously, the city of Port St. Lucie is on the Upper East Coast of Florida, or you wouldn't be part of this workshop today. And if you click 2 more times, then this is an aerial photograph showing the utility service area outlined in red, which is 138 square miles. And if you click twice more, currently the city is served by 2 facilities, one in the north, the James E. Anderson Florida and Aquifer well field and RO water treatment plant, and to the east, the Prineville Surficial Aquifer and Florida and Aquifer well fields and water treatment plants. And if you go to the next slide, this slide shows the population over the past 20 years. And as you can see, over that time period, the population of the city has increased over 3.5 times. And now if you will click, the Port St. Lucie utilities actually came into being in 1994 when the city acquired the water and wastewater utility from St. Lucie County. And St. Lucie County acquired it from General Development Utilities. One of the first activities that was undertaken after the utility acquired the utility from St. Lucie County was an expansion of the Surficial Aquifer well field. And concurrently, some improvements and a re-rating of the Prineville lime softening water treatment plant up to a capacity of 8 MGD. And if you click to the next one. But one of the things that the Surficial Aquifer well field pointed out was that it was becoming increasingly hard because of development around the water treatment plant to find sites for future Surficial Aquifer wells, and they were becoming more distant from the water treatment plant. So in 1995, the utilities undertook a raw water resources investigation, and that investigation indicated that brackish water from the Florida Aquifer would be a plentiful source of supply that would support the city for a number of years to come. So that led to the design and construction of the Prineville Florida well field and RO water treatment plant, which was placed into service in August of 1999. Then next. Concurrently with these activities, the utility also undertook a service area expansion, which was a very ambitious project to provide service to 17,000 already platted lots, but without water and wastewater service. And that program started in 1996 and occurred over the next 10 years. In the meantime, you'll see on the graph that once we came into the 2000s, the growth curve started to get steeper. So if you'll click. So in response to that, the city turned around and expanded the Prineville well field and RO water treatment plant up to its maximum capacity and began the planning, design, and completed the construction of the James E. Anderson Florida Aquifer well field and RO water treatment plant. But growth was still proceeding at a rapid rate. So next click. So shortly after putting the James E. Anderson facility online, it was expanded up to its maximum capacity, and that was completed in 2009. At the same time, the city who has always looked to the future, asked that a seawater desalination feasibility be performed, and that was also completed in 2009. And then one other activity, the city purchased property out to the west of the city at what's called the Rangeline Road site, and did the investigations and permitted a third Florida Aquifer well field in that area. And next click. So that leads us up to the present. In 2017 to 2019, the city developed the McCarty Ranch Water Supply Plan, which I'm going to talk about in just a minute. And one more click. And so the water supply plan looks at what's next going forward to continue to respond to the significant population growth experienced by the city. Next slide. So the McCarty Ranch Water Supply Plan, next. The goal of the plan basically was to look at alternatives for supplying water to the utility over the 30-year planning period, which went through 2050. And if you'll click. So the plan approach include determining of the future water supply needs, then next click. Identification and review of water supply sources, next. The development of water supply alternatives, next. An evaluation and decision modeling to pick an alternative, and finally, next, the recommendations and next steps. So a little bit, that's fine. So we started by looking at the per capita water demands. And as you can see, they were higher in the early 2000s, preceding and following the 2008 recession. Per capita water consumption dropped off significantly. And then more recently, it's trended back up. So next click. So for planning purposes, we picked a value in the middle for our projections of 100 gallons per capita per day. So on the next slide, this then shows the populations, and these population projections are as of 2016 while we're doing the plan. So the more recent projections might be a little bit higher. We looked at BEBR medium, high, and then the St. Johns River Water Management, South Florida, Water Management District projections that were done for the 2016 water supply plan, and click. And we selected those to use for our projections. And as you can see, the city is still projected to experience significant population growth, going from just over 200,000 today up to somewhere around 325,000 at the end of the 30-year planning period. So that's more than a 50% increase in population, again, over the next 30-year period. So next slide. So we took the per capita demands, the population projections, we came up with demand projections for finished water. We then added to those numbers the amount of water that's lost as reject in the RO process to come up with a set of numbers, which you see on the graph here, which are our projected average day and max day raw water supply needs. And one thing you'll notice here, already permitted in the system is sufficient water to serve the utility over the 30-year planning period. However, if you'll click, and then one more click. So one of the things that we noted when we were doing the plan, there are a couple things that are going on. Number one, even though the superficial aquifer system at Prineville is permitted for 5 MGD, there are limitations on that well field because of it is highly influenced by drought conditions, which then impact adjacent wetlands, which constrain the withdrawal from that well field. And then at the James E. Anderson facility, we have experienced some upconing of more saline water, which has caused some of those wells to be backplugged and potentially limited their capacity. So for planning purposes, we assumed that we had a reliable supply that we could depend upon of about 35 MGD. And then the next slide. So after we looked at the projected demands and what our existing supplies were, we determined that we needed at least an additional 5.1 MGD to meet our maximum day demands. And then next. And then as I indicated, because of some potential restrictions in our existing aquifers, we determined that we needed probably upwards of 12 MGD. And then finally, if you'll click, so for planning purposes, we decided that we would look for a supply that could supply up to 20 MGD over the 30-year planning period to make sure that we could reliably serve our existing and future customers. And next. So once again, going back to the service area here, we looked at the potential future sources. One of the things we did in the plan is we set a criteria that if a source couldn't supply at least 5 MGD, we weren't going to consider it. So if you'll click, so the first source was the already permitted but not constructed Rangeline RO well field. And then second, next, is the McCarty Ranch Extension Water Quality Restoration Area and surface water from the C23 canal. Next was superficial aquifer withdrawal on the McCarty Ranch property. Next was reclaimed water from the Glades Water Reclamation Facility. And finally, seawater desalination. So if you go to the next slide. So we took the sources that we had identified, we combined them together to come up with a set of 7 alternatives. Each we thought would be capable of supplying at least 20 MGD to the city over the planning period. And so we evaluated those alternatives based upon cost and non-cost factors. Each of the alternatives was costed for capital and estimated operational cost. I'm not going to show those here, but on the next slide, I'm going to talk briefly about the non-cost decision-making factors. And if you'll click one more time. So we had a series of meetings with city staff. We had a committee, and we basically came up with a set of non-cost evaluation factors. Each member of the committee was able to provide their own relative ranking of the importance of each of the factors, which then we obtained a consensus rating. And then each member scored each of the non-cost factors from 1 to 5 to come up with a total score. One of the things I've highlighted here that kind of drove the decision-making process was one of the most important non-cost factors was diversification of water supply sources, because for the most part right now, the city is totally reliant upon the Florida Aquifer. So if you go to the next slide. So let me talk briefly about the future plan. Next. So the recommended alternative was to use a combination of water from the Rangeline RO facility and surface water from the McCarty Ranch property to meet the future water supply needs. Next. The plan for implementation was to do Rangeline Road first because it's already permitted and it would be most easy to implement, followed by the McCarty Ranch water supply because there's a number of permitting activities, construction of the reservoir, pilot testing that would need to go on before that plant was actually constructed and put in service. Next. And one of the things that we also determined in our modeling that we performed during the study was that ASR on the McCarty Ranch property could benefit the project by increasing the water supply and significantly increasing the reliability during potential drought situations. Next. So the recommended water supply concept consists of developing the Rangeline Road RO well field and water treatment plant in phase 1, followed by development of the McCarty Ranch surface water supply. And if you'll click, so basically we would have 10 MGD of reverse osmosis water, treated water from the Florida Aquifer, and 10 MGD of surface water to give us our 20 MGD to meet the future water supply needs. And next. So what is this? So where is this going to take place? If you'll click. So phase 1 is implementing a portion, not the whole well field you see there, a portion of the well field, and constructing an RO plant at the existing Rangeline Road storage and pumping station site. And then next, then in phase 2, implementing the McCarty Ranch surface water supply and constructing on that same site a companion surface water treatment plant. One of the things that's good about this alternative, if you'll notice, these new facilities will be on the opposite side of the service area. So from the standpoint of maintaining pressure and size of transmission mains, it's an optimum location. So next. So if we look a little bit more closely at the McCarty Ranch site, and if you'll click. So the McCarty Ranch property is 3,100 acres. It has an existing, we call it a lake. It's actually, it was formed when borrowed material was obtained from that area. And then there's the Extension property, which is a 1,900 acre site to the south next to the C23 canal. And if you'll click. So the water quality restoration project, which is separate from the water supply, basically takes water from the C23 canal, and you want to click maybe, and one more time. Okay, so there were 2 existing agricultural pumping stations. Those pumping stations under an operating agreement are allowed to withdraw water from the C23 canal, pump it into the water quality restoration area where basically the water can be renovated through percolation and seepage. And this basically help to prevent the large discharges of fresh water to the St. Lucie River. And one more click. So the surface water component would include the construction of a diversion pumping station, which could either obtain water directly from the C23 pumping stations, could receive water indirectly via seepage into the perimeter canal system around the water quality restoration area, or could receive direct discharge from the water, the bermed areas of the water quality restoration area. Then that would be pumped to the McCarty Ranch Reservoir, which would be reconstructed, and a central berm would be provided so that we could isolate sides of the reservoir. A new reservoir pumping station would be constructed, which would then pump water over to the proposed Rangeline Road surface water treatment plant. And with that, and the next click, I will thank, and then there's a potential layout of the ASR wells. So thank you everyone for your attention.
Great, thank you, Chris. Let's see if anyone has any questions or comments. They can raise their hand. We're requesting that everyone try to limit their comments to around 3 minutes, so everyone has time to provide comments.
Right there, Jack.
Okay, Mrs. Thurlow-Lippish.
Thank you very much. Chris, I just wanted to commend the city of Port St. Lucie on its work with McCarty Ranch. And I know former Mayor Greg Orbeck has had so much to do with that. And being creative with the water supply issues that are imperative. And then together with water quality improvements, I mean, that is an example for the whole state. Thank you so much.
Joshua.
Thank you. That's true. And again, that's why we asked the city to present here today, because they are very progressive in developing alternative water supplies and doing a lot of the right things to help protect our resources. So yes, thank you guys. Let's see, Josh Miller, you have your hand raised.
I did. Thank you again. Good hearing from James and Brad. I have a question about James's presentation early on. He had come up with a 100 gallon per day per capita for the anticipated increase in flow. Is that a finished water number or a raw water number? Because I just went through our water use permit renewal not too long ago. We wound up with 104 here. So I wasn't sure we're within the city limits here in St. Lucie West. If that's accurate enough for them based off of what's your projection or South Water Management's projection is. Was it 687,000? I believe you expect to increase in the next 20 years here. So I'm just curious. I know it's the whole service area, not just Port St. Lucie, but I just had a comment on that. That's all.
James, if you want to try to answer that. I don't want to speak for your for Port St. Lucie. Can we unmute James Christopher?
Yeah, sorry, Tom.
There you go.
One of the unique things about Port St. Lucie is, if you go back to the history, a lot of the lots were developed with private wells and septic tanks. So when the city went through and basically provided service to all of those lots, when people connect to the system who had a private well and septic tank, they are allowed to keep their private well when they connect to the public supply. So a lot of the existing city, which encompasses most of the developed service area, a lot of those people are still using their private wells for irrigation. So we believe that that has a dampening effect upon the potable water supply. And to directly answer the question, the 100 gallons per capita per day, that is finished water delivered from the treatment plants.
Last question, does the city have a timeline for this project?
Yes. The Rangeline Road facility, and I don't have this right in my head, but I believe it starts around 2025, and then in 2030 to 2032 is the anticipated time frame for the surface water source.
All right, that's all I have. Great presentation. Thank you.
Good questions. Thank you. I see Mark Perry has his hand raised, if we can unmute him.
Yes, hi. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. So I know the Upper East Coast Water Supply Plan, looking forward and updating for projections to 2045 and understanding the use of the needs on the percent of agricultural use for the water supply. Is that's in the plan, right, to provide for that agricultural water supply use, correct?
Correct. Yeah, and that'll be detailed in Nancy's presentation coming up. If you want to see, we'll have,
I see. Right.
numbers and such for that.
Okay. Yeah, I apologize. I didn't catch the first part of the presentation.
That's okay.
But I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Okay. Feel free to ask questions after Nancy's presentation if your questions aren't answered or if you have additional comments. But yeah, Nancy will go through what's in the water supply plan for all the use types.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Okay. Are there any other hands raised? Any other questions or comments? I'm not seeing any hands raised at this point. Okay, we'll move on then. Next on the agenda, we have Rob Earl. And again, he's going to give an overview of the East Coast Florida model. Does anyone? Okay, let me get set up.
Okay, good morning, everyone. This is Rob Earl, and I'm a modeler with the South Florida District in West Palm, a groundwater modeler. And one of the things we did to support the 2021 Upper East Coast Plan was to update our East Coast Florida model. I'm going to briefly go over that and briefly go over the how we used this model to support the plan by running a couple of scenarios, simulations for them. Before I do that, I want to preface this with a couple of important points that came out of the existing Upper East Coast Water Supply Plan. One of which is that the superficial aquifer system use is limited now. And so any increases in water use going forward should be supported primarily by the Floridan aquifer system, which lies beneath it, which tends to be brackish in places. And so but the brackish water can be used as supplemental agricultural water source. Another important point in the supply plan in the future direction section, that's where these are coming from. is the importance of maintaining wells that are critical to long-term monitoring and modeling. We use these wells when we maintain and update our groundwater models. So these are important wells. And then also, lastly, any new Avon Park permeable zone well fields should have greater spacing and lower per well capacity. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you a little bit about the East Coast Floridan model and what we did to update and recalibrate it, and then how we applied that model to the Upper East Coast planning scenarios, a current and a future scenario, and what we did with the results of those modeling scenarios. And if you look at my little map over there to the on the right side, you'll see that the big blue rectangle is the outline of the model domain for the East Coast Florida model. And inside, you can see the extent of the Upper East Coast planning area. The model itself is built and run using ModFlow CWAT, which is a finite difference cellular model that can simulate both groundwater flow and density dependent groundwater flow or salty water flow. And the period of record for this model, the period of time over which we calibrated this model, was a 24-year period, 1989 to 2012, consisting of 288 monthly stress periods or time periods. The cell size in this model is 2,400 feet by 2,400 feet. And the model consists of 7 layers. The top 2 aquifers, or layers 1 and 3, are the 2 that we're mostly concerned with here, because those are the only 2 water-bearing zones that the Upper East Coast is projected to use. And then from the Floridan aquifer. And the model itself was calibrated to observed water levels and observed water quality. Water quality being represented by total dissolved solids concentrations in milligrams per liter. This is a geologic cross-section through pretty much the midsection of St. Lucie County. And it shows you approximately where the aquifers are and how they're represented in the model. So layer 1 up there being the upper permeable zone of the Upper Floridan, and layer 3, the Avon Park permeable zone. Those are the ones to focus on right there. Those are the ones we'll be talking about. Now, what we did to update the East Coast Florida model, we did 2 things. We updated the layering of the model. You can see from this picture here that the East Central Florida transient expanded model overlaps the East Coast Florida model a little bit up there in the northwestern area, which almost covers all of the Upper East Coast planning area. We brought in some updated hydrostratigraphic or layering elevation data. So we were able to enhance and slightly improve our understanding of the thickness and the elevations of the layers in this area. And then the other thing we did was we brought in some new aquifer test data from several sites that are scattered all around the modeling domain, which gave us a better understanding of the hydraulic conductivity throughout the layers of the East Coast Floridan model. With that information in place, we recalibrated the model and met, and in some cases even exceeded, the calibration criteria for water levels and water quality that had already been met. And so you could say, I suppose, that we had a new and improved East Coast Florida model ready to be used as a guidance tool for the planners. That's where the planners came in. So our next step, now that we've updated and recalibrated the model, was to receive planning scenarios for us to run in the model. So the planners came to us with 2 scenarios. The first one is a relatively, more or less current conditions or base condition, 2019 condition. It consists of demands for public supply, power generation, landscape recreational, and commercial, industrial, and institutional that come directly from historical 2019 pumpage. And then the agricultural demands were estimated based on a model we use called the Agricultural Field Scale Irrigation Requirements Simulation Model, or AFSRs. It's a little easier to say AFSRs. This is where the demands for the 2019 base condition came from. And when I say demands, I mean pumping rates, how much water we're withdrawing from these two aquifers, the Upper Florida and the APPZ, or the Avon Park. The other simulation, the other scenario, was a future condition for that gave us 2045 future demands. Public supply, power generation, commercial, industrial were all based on future population growth rates. The agricultural demands, again, came to us from using the ASR simulator. And then landscape and recreational demands were based on future 2045 planning projections. So we ran these two scenarios and we looked at the differences between the two. So we basically took the result from 2045 and subtracted the result from 2019. And we looked at the difference in water levels that we might see based on the model and the difference in water quality that the model predicts. Again, focusing on the top two aquifers of the model, the Upper Florida and the APPZ. Now, a quick word about limitations in simulating demands. Each of these simulations is a 24-year period. Remember, I said the model was based on 1989 to 2012, 24 years. That was the calibration period of the model. So each of these scenarios is run using that calibrated model. So they're 24-year runs, but the model does not simulate annual demand growth. And that's what this gray line would be here. We don't do this in the model. We turn the demands on instantly. So the demands are on from beginning to end. So this blue line would be the 2019 demands, totaling about 78 million gallons a day, and in the Upper East Coast planning area. And then this green line would represent the 2045 demands, totaling about 99 million gallons a day. And the demands are based on raw water. And so you could say that the results from these simulations can be considered conservative. Now, something I wanted to point out also, these are regional models. And remember that large blue rectangle. These are very large regional models. And the cells in these models are large. One cell covers 132 acres. And that roughly covers, what you're looking at over here is the cells sitting on top of an aerial photograph. One cell pretty much covers about half of the Turtle Creek Golf Club. So the thing to take away here is that we are looking for regional trends, regional groundwater flow. We can't really accurately simulate local drawdowns. So regional models like these should be used as overall planning tools, which is precisely how we're using it here. The Floridan aquifer demands in the Upper East Coast planning area. This slide shows them broken out by water use category. I wanted to point out that agricultural water use is expected to decline just a little bit in 2045 by about 6 million gallons a day, whereas public supply is expected to increase by about 23.5 million gallons a day. Overall, the total increase in demands from now until 2045 is expected to be about 21 million gallons a day. This map shows you the major water users in the Upper East Coast plan, and I wanted to point out some of these as a detail. Up here, the Okeechobee Clean Energy Center, power generation wells are expected to increase by this much, by about 1.3 in the Upper Floridan aquifer and about 2 million gallons a day in the APPZ in 2045. In St. Lucie County, operates, it's not pumping anything from the Florida in 2019, but they are projected to pump 4 million gallons a day from their projected north well field at 2045 and 1.4 from their projected central well field in 2045. And they also have are planning to build 2 other well fields, but they're not expected to be used in 2045, the Cloud Grove and the South well field. Port of St. Lucie Utilities, as you just heard, operates 3 well fields. The JEA is here, this is the Prineville, and this is the Southwest. In 2045, they have a projected slight decrease in demands at JEA and Prineville, whereas the Southwest is expected to be using about 13 million gallons a day, mostly from the APPZ, about 3.5 from the Upper Florida, and about 9.5 from the APPZ. City of Stewart is expected to increase by 2.62 million gallons a day. They're not pumping anything from the Upper Florida or from the Florida Aquifer in 2019, but they'll mostly be using the APPZ in 2045, about 2.6 million gallons a day. Hobart and Oslo, the Hobart is expected to increase its usage of the Upper Florida by about 2 million gallons a day in 2045, and a decrease of about 1 million gallons a day from the Oslo treatment plant.
And those well fields are outside of our water management district.
I do want to point out these well fields are outside of the Upper East Coast planning area, but you'll see that there is some influence from the Oslo well field here that may extend down into the Upper East Coast planning area. That's why we included these wells in our simulations. And City of Vero Beach is expected to increase by about 1.6 million gallons a day in 2045, using only the Upper Florida aquifer. Fort Pierce Utilities operates 33rd Street and West well fields. They're all expected to increase a little bit in 2045, and those are the projected increases there. And the Treasure Coast Energy Center is expected to increase by about 1.9 million gallons a day, using only the Upper Florida aquifer. Now these pictures, they may look a little busy, but I'm going to tell you what you're seeing here. This is the difference between the 2045 modeling scenario and the 2019 modeling scenario. And what you're looking at here is the difference in the Upper Florida aquifer water levels. So if we took the 2045 model and subtracted the 2019 model, these are the difference in heads or water levels that you might see. I want to point out that up here at St. Lucie County, the North Well Field is expected to pump 4 million gallons a day from the Upper Florida. That the model predicts a 17-foot drawdown there as a result of that. There's no demand there in 2019, but 4 million gallons a day in 2045. We are expecting, the model predicts about 6.5 feet of drawdown at the Treasure Coast Energy well field, and about 1 foot of drawdown at the City of Stewart well field. We are expected to see about, or the model expects to see about 3 feet of rebound or water level increase at the JEA well field, partly due to their projected decrease in water use, and also partly due to a decrease in agricultural demands in that area. And then over here west of it, you can also see a little area of rebound where these agricultural permits are expected to decrease or go offline in 2045. So again, the red areas, the beige colored areas, those are areas where we're expected to see some drawdown, and the green areas are areas where we're expected to see a little bit of rebound. All the other, the white area, not much change at all. And then this is a look at the water quality difference, or the difference in total dissolved solids concentrations. There isn't much change at all in most of the Upper East Coast, but if you'll notice, there is some change up in this area. So I'm going to zoom in on that just for a minute. And right here in the area of St. Lucie County North well field, the projected well field, because of the projected 4 million gallons a day from the upper Florida there, where the model predicts a TDS increase of as high as 4,800 milligrams per liter, probably due to some upconing, pulling some of the brackish water up from the deeper aquifers. This area at Fort Pierce Utility, not much of an increase there, anywhere from 100 to 250 milligrams per liter because of the demand increases at the well fields there. And then up here in the area of Oslo water treatment plant, where actually the model actually predicts a slight decrease in TDS, and that's probably due to the demand decrease there. So a little bit of improvement in water quality there. Now, what you're looking at here is a look at how the TDS concentrations change in the model inside a single model run under 2019 scenario demands. So this would be the change or the increase from the first year of the model to year 24 of the model run with just the 2019 demands in place. So you can see that up here in the area in Northeast St. Lucie County, we expect, the model shows that the TDS values increase as much as 2,100 milligrams per liter. And if you look at the 2045 inside, now you're looking at just the change in TDS concentrations over the course of a single model run under 2045 demands. So a little bit more water being pulled here. So if I toggle between the two, you can see the change up there in northeastern St. Lucie County, the slight increase in TDS levels that the model sees. The highest there in 2045 expected to be about 4,600 milligrams per liter increase in the area of St. Lucie County North Wellfield. Now the Avon Park permeable zone, we've been talking about the upper Florida, and now we're going to go down to layer 3 of the model, which is the APPZ. This is the change in, this is the model predicted change in water levels between the two scenarios, the future and the current. And we see as much as a 3-foot drawdown up here in the area of the St. Lucie County North Wellfield. Now remember, this wellfield is only pumping in the upper Florida. But the model predicts a little bit of drawdown beneath it in the APPZ nonetheless. And then about 2 feet of drawdown at the City of Stewart wellfield, and then which has a 2.6 million gallon a day APPZ demand in 2045. And then about 2 feet of rebound around Port St. Lucie JEA wellfield. And then out here in the west, where we have another foot or so of rebound due to projected agricultural demand reductions. And here's the water quality difference between 2045 and 2019. Here you can see up in St. Lucie County in the APPZ. Remember, we projected, the model projected about 4,800 increase in TDS here. Now it's projecting in the APPZ about 1,000 milligram per liter increase. So what this tells us from what the model is saying is that there's probably going to be some upconing because of the heavy pumping that's going on above it in the upper Florida. Here at the Port St. Lucie Southwest wellfield, we're seeing a projected increase of as high as maybe 700 milligrams per liter because of the increase in demands here. Most of the increase coming from the APPZ. And City of Stewart has a little bit of an increase also, about 1,000 milligrams per liter due to its projected 2.6 billion gallons a day from the APPZ in 2045. And here, what you're looking at is, again, This is the change in TDS concentrations over a single model run under 2019 demands. Now, remember, we're down in the APPZ, which is more brackish. So we're expecting to see more TDS concentrations. But this is the 2019 demands over a single model run, and this is the 2045 demands in a single model run. So you can see when I toggle, you can see the areas that are expected to increase in TDS under 2045 demands. Now, I just wanted to show you a couple of individual hydrographs. This hydrograph here shows you near Fort Pierce utilities in the upper Florida Aquifer. What you're looking at is the light blue line is the water levels under 2019 demands changing over time. And then under 2045 demands, the darker blue. So when the pumping increases as expected in 2045, we would expect to see the water levels fall a little bit. And that's what those two lines show. And then the green and orange lines here show the associated slight increase in TDS concentrations because of the increase in pumping. So we see a foot or two of drawdown because of that extra pumping there, and about an increase of about 1,000. What's that? 1,400 to 1,600, just a couple of hundred milligrams per liter of TDS. And then one more to show you, City of Stewart Wellfield. Again, here's the projected drop in water levels from 2019 to 2045, and the associated increase in TDS demand, TDS concentrations from about 4,900 to about 5,900 milligrams per liter. Remember, City of Stewart sits fairly close to the coast, so you might expect a little bit more of an increase in TDS, total dissolved solids in that area. Now, the conclusions we can make from our modeling as far as water levels go, in the upper Florida Aquifer, except for the northeastern corner of St. Lucie, the predicted drawdowns in almost all of the upper East Coast planning area in the upper Florida are less than 2.5 feet. When we get down to the APPZ, we're expecting less than 1.5 feet of drawdown in most of the upper East Coast planning area, except up in northeast St. Lucie, where we might see as high as a 3-foot drawdown. For water quality in the upper Florida Aquifer, except for the northeast corner of St. Lucie County, we don't predict anything larger than a 250 milligram per liter change in total dissolved solids concentrations in the upper Florida. In the APPZ, there's a potential for 500 to 1,000 milligrams per liter increase with the 2019 demands in central and eastern Martin County, and then in southeastern St. Lucie County over a 24-year simulation period during the model run. That's under 2019 demands. The potential for there is a potential for upward movement, or what we call upconing of brackish water from the APPZ into the upper Florida, which may cause water degradation in northeastern St. Lucie County. And then an additional 700 to about 1,000 milligrams per liter increase from the current to the 2045 future simulations is predicted at the southwest well field of Port St. Lucie's and Stewart, and then St. Lucie County North. This is in the APPZ. Elsewhere in the upper East Coast planning area, we expect to see less than 250 milligram per liter increase in total dissolved solids. So overall, we could say that the Floridan appears to be capable of meeting projected demands for all users through 2045, as long as there is appropriate well field management in place. And I want to thank my team members in putting this together. The bulk of the modeling work was done by my friends Mirja and Uditha. I thank them a lot for their hard work in helping to put this all together.
Okay, thank you, Rob. That was a good overview of the East Coast Florida model results. Does anyone have any questions for Rob about his presentation? Okay, Jackie, it looks like you have your hand raised.
Thank you. Rob, my question, I believe, is close to page 39, around that airport area, the North Wellfield at the airport. Can you go back to that slide, please?
Yep,
Yeah, I'll get there in a minute. You said,
39.
I think 39 or somewhere close to there.
can't see the numbers on these. There it is.
Some of them have them, some of them don't. So I just like this map because it is readable for me. So that airport area is where the pink button is, where it says north, I believe.
Yeah, that would be right there.
Yeah. So I just don't understand why, when you report on this area about the 17-foot drawdown, that's just kind of mentioned like that's normal. To me, that seems big, and I have asked about this before, but I expected there to be some kind of difference in the presentation this time, and there's not. So can you explain how it works for me?
Explain.
I'll do, yeah. We looked into that a little bit more just to make sure that we were comfortable with that as well. And what we found was in the model, the aquifer productivity or the hydraulic conductivity of that model layer is really pretty low. And that's a result of an aquifer performance test in the area that was done. Just the aquifer doesn't produce as much water as some other areas of the model. And when you add in a new well field pumping 4 MGD, where that aquifer is a little tighter, it won't produce as much water, the drawdown results are higher. There's more drawdown. And so I think it's a function of the model. It's also a function of putting all four, splitting up that 4 MGD is only in two of the model cells. And we're going to be working with the utility, St. Lucie County Utilities, to spread out their well field and in an effort to reduce the amount of drawdown that would be imposed on the aquifer. I think they've just drilled one test well and have kind of just begun to test it themselves to plan and figure out where they want to install their wells. And so we'll be working with them to prevent that or lessen that impact to the aquifer, because like I said, this is a proposed well field. They haven't drilled those wells yet or built the water treatment plant. And so we want to work with them and be proactive and prevent the predictive results that you see here today.
Yeah.
Why don't you talk about it like that in your presentation?
Oh, well, I probably should have mentioned that. You're right, and I did not. I forgot to mention that there is a difference in transmissivity in that part of the model. For instance, if you get down into central, closer to Martin County and where the southwest well field there is, there is more water available down there. It's more transmissive. The hydraulic conductivities are higher. It just so happens that it's a little tighter up in the northeast corner, and so that's why the model predicts greater drawdowns up there.
Okay, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, and you're right. I did not mention that, and that's I'll make a note to make sure that I mention that.
Well, I appreciate it, and I understand that I don't understand a lot of things here, but that 17 feet just seems excessive, especially in comparison with the other reported areas. And I would feel like that's not acceptable But of course, I'm not a scientist, and I'm sure they're working it out, so it'll be better. But it just seemed like when you're reporting it, it's like, this is how it's going to be. And my hope would be that if it's better for it not to be 17 feet, that we would be hoping, or not, we would be advising for that. So thank you so much, and I appreciate it.
Oh, sure.
Sure, you're welcome. See, is there anyone else who has questions or comments on Rob's presentation today? Not seeing any hands raised at this point. Give another minute or so if people need to digest what he presented.
Move on to Nancy.
Okay. Not seeing any more hands raised at this point. So with that, I think we want to move on in the agenda and have Nancy Demonstrani provide her summary of the draft 2021 Upper East Coast Plan Update.
Okay, good morning. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Good morning. My name is Nancy Demonstrani, and I'm the Upper East Coast Water Supply Plan Manager. This morning, I'll be providing an overview of the draft 2021 Upper East Coast Water Supply Plan Update. This will cover the basic elements of the entire plan and give you a general idea of the topics covered in each chapter of the plan. Next slide. The Upper East Coast Planning Area includes all of Martin and St. Lucie counties and the northeastern portion of Okeechobee County as shown in purple on the map. The northern border of the planning area is a county line between St. Lucie and Indian River counties, and it is also the boundary between the St. Johns River Water Management District and the South Florida Water Management District. The southern border of the planning area is a county line between Palm Beach and Martin counties. The planning area is approximately 1,230 square miles and has 15 public supply utilities located entirely within its boundaries. 2 additional utilities, the town of Jupiter and village of Tequesta service areas, are partially located in the Upper East Coast planning area. But since they are primarily located in the Lower East Coast planning area, they are discussed in detail in the Lower East Coast Water Supply Plan. The Upper East Coast has a large agricultural industry, primarily citrus, with the majority located in western St. Lucie County. Some of the important natural and water resources discussed in the plan are the C23, C24, C25, and C44 canals. Also, some other important resources in the Upper East Coast planning area are the St. Lucie River and Estuary, the Indian River Lagoon, and the North Fork of the Loxahatchee River in southern Martin County. Next slide. Public participation is essential to ensure that the plan reflects the needs of all of our stakeholder groups in the planning area. Some ways the district solicits input is by meeting with local governments, agricultural interests, public supply utilities, environmental groups, and local communities. The district also provides updates to the district governing board. Including today, the district has held 2 stakeholder workshops, 1 technical methods workshop, and has met with local governments, agricultural, and public supply utility representatives to collaborate and share information. The draft plan was posted on the web August 25th and is now available for public review and comment. Any comments need to be provided to me in writing by no later than October 1st. Next slide. Okay, the plan consists of 3 documents: the planning document, the appendices, and the support document, which are all posted on the web as of August 25th. The main document is the planning document, and in addition, there are 5 appendices which contain supplemental information to the planning document. And then there is the support document, which is a general document that contains support information for all the district's water supply plans and includes things that don't change over time and are relative to all planning areas, such as legislative criteria. Next slide. The 2021 Upper East Coast Water Supply Plan Update document consists of 9 chapters, as shown on the left, 5 associated appendices, and an executive summary. Today, we will be providing the main points of each of the planning document chapters and the associated appendices. The chapters and appendix for the support document are listed on here for your reference in the bottom right of the screen, but we will not be covering that today. However, they are available online for you to review and provide written comments on. Next slide. The goal of water supply plans is required by Chapter 373 Florida statutes. This requires a quantification of water supply needs for all existing and future reasonable beneficial uses within the 20-year planning horizon. The level of certainty planning goal is based on meeting those needs for a 1 in 10-year drought event and to sustain the water resources and natural systems. Basically, the goal is to make sure there are sufficient water supplies to meet demands over the next 20 years without harming the resource or natural system. The following slides will present highlights of the chapters and appendices in chapter order. Next slide. There are 5 objectives for this water supply plan, which are met in the chapters of the plan update. The objectives from the 2016 water supply plan update were modified and built on for this 2021 update, so we are not starting from scratch. Water supply to meet the demands during a 1 in 10-year drought through 2045 is the primary objective of the plan. We also at the same time need to protect environmental systems and look at ways to improve the efficiency of water use through conservation. In addition, we encourage the use of alternative supply sources such as the Florida Aquifer system or reclaimed water to meet future demands. And finally, we coordinate as closely as possible with other entities such as local governments to make sure our goals meet their goals and integrate with other water resource initiatives such as a comprehensive Everglades restoration plan. Next slide. Okay, the starting point for water supply planning is determining future water demands. Using data from the University of Florida Bureau of Economic and Business Research, or more commonly known as BEBR, the Upper East Coast Planning Region's population is expected to increase by about 218,000 residents, or a 47% increase by 2045. Although population increases result in an increase in public supply and domestic self-supply demands, irrigated agricultural acreage and demands are expected to decrease in the Upper East Coast planning area. This is primarily due to greening disease as well as a conversion of some agricultural lands to residential developments. As a result, there is a projected 3% decrease in overall demands from 2019 to 2045. Next slide. A visual comparison of the population changes show an overall increase in permanent residents in the Upper East Coast planning area from 2019 to 2045. For both Martin and St. Lucie counties, public supply, which is utility supplied water, is shown in blue on the graph, and domestic self-supply, which is self-supplied water, is shown in orange on the graph, increase in both counties. In Martin County, the number of permanent residents is expected to increase from about 150,000 in 2019 to a little less than 200,000 in 2045. And in St. Lucie County, the permanent residents are expected to increase from a little over 300,000 in 2019 to a little less than 500,000 in 2045. Overall, population increase for the Upper East Coast planning area from 2019 to 2045 is approximately 47%. Northeastern Okeechobee is not shown on this graph due to there being no public supply utility served population and a minimal domestic self-supplied population of approximately 500 to 600 residents. Next slide. Agriculture is the largest user in the Upper East Coast planning area. By statute, the Florida Department of Agricultural Consumer Services, or more commonly known as FDACS, is directed to develop statewide projections of agricultural acreages and demands on an annual basis. These projections are done through the Florida Statewide Agricultural Irrigation Demand Model, or more commonly known as FSED. The acreage information is from a GIS database with crops categorized, as you can see in the legend on the map on the right. In the Upper East Coast, in 2018, the largest crop was citrus, which is shown in orange on the map, followed by sugarcane, which is shown by the blue areas on the map. The majority of crops are located in western St. Lucie County, with a fair amount also located in western Martin County, and a few areas in northeastern Okeechobee. The beige areas on the map are non-irrigated agricultural lands that are zoned as agriculture but are not currently planted with crops. Next slide. Okay, total agricultural acreages for this plan update were obtained from the FSED 7 projections. The largest difference from 2019 to 2045 is the reduction in citrus acreage, which is shown in the dark orange on the graph, which is expected due to citrus diseases such as greening and the anticipated conversion of some of the citrus acreage to residential developments. In addition, other crops also show decreases, as you can see on the graph, from 2019 to 2045. Next slide. Okay, there are 6 water use categories that we calculate demand estimates and projections for. I've already talked about the 2 largest, which are agriculture and public supply, and I touched briefly on domestic self-supply as well. The remaining 3 water use categories, commercial, industrial, institutional, landscape, recreational, and power generation, and their associated demands are shown in this table. There's an increase in demands for public supply, commercial, industrial, institutional, and landscape, recreational, and some slight decreases in power generation and domestic self-supply from 2019 to 2045. The biggest decrease in demands is from agriculture, and overall in the Upper East Coast planning area, there's a decrease in demands of approximately 7 million gallons per day, which is primarily from the decrease in agricultural demands from approximately 175 to 130 million gallons per day. Details on the demands for all use types is found in Chapter 2 and Appendix A of the plan update. Next slide. There are 6 water use categories that we calculate demands and estimates for. Wait a minute, did we skip a slide? I'm sorry.
Yeah,
We
I
did.
think you. Yeah, I think you.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I skipped ahead. I'm sorry. All right, the plan used FSED 7 acres coupled with ASR's model to calculate agricultural demands from crops. FDEX has predicted a decrease in overall crop acreage, which results in a decrease in crop demands from approximately 173 to 128 million gallons per day from 2019 to 2045. Livestock water, drinking water, and aquaculture demands, which are also included in determining total ag demands, remain steady from 2019 to 2045. Overall, this results in a decrease in total agricultural demands from approximately 175 to 130 million gallons per day from 2019 to 2045. And we just talked about that. This is showing all the total water demand summary. And again, you see mainly agriculture has the biggest decrease, while public supply, landscape, recreational, and power generation shows a slight decrease also, but landscape, recreational, public supply, and domestic self-supply, I'm messing that up again. Domestic self-supply and power generation show a decrease, where public supply, landscape, recreational show an increase. The use of conservation limits the need of having to expand the use of other sources. It is important to encourage and promote water conservation as much as possible, and all water sources should be used as efficiently as possible by all users in order to reduce water use. In the Upper East Coast, the 2 largest water users are agriculture, followed by public supply. One way agricultural users are practicing water conservation is by converting to more efficient irrigation systems such as micro-irrigation. And many users in the Upper East Coast are also implementing Florida Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services, or more commonly known as FDEC, best management practices to ensure more efficient use of water. This is because it is not profitable to be inefficient at moving water. There is one mobile irrigation lab in St. Lucie County, which serves Martin, St. Lucie, and Okeechobee counties. This mobile lab is operated by FDEC and assists farmers in improving the efficiency of their irrigation systems. Public water suppliers use multiple indoor and outdoor programs like plumbing fixture retrofits, irrigation ordinances, system audits, and educational programs. Public supply conservation efforts in the Upper East Coast are reflected in the historical per capita use rates, which have shown a 22% decrease from 167 in the year 2000 to an average of 130 for the years 2014 through 2019. Through this planning effort, we have identified an additional 12 million gallons per day of potential savings in the Upper East Coast planning area through conservation. 6 million gallons of savings through conservation can be achieved by urban users, which includes public supply, domestic self-supply, and landscape recreational use types. And another 6 million gallons of water can be saved through conservation by agricultural users. Further details of water conservation in the Upper East Coast can be found in Chapter 3 of the plan update. Next slide. The plan identifies water resource issues and addresses these issues through a review of data and analysis. In the Upper East Coast planning area, fresh groundwater from the superficial aquifer system is limited due to the low productivity and environmental factors such as the proximity to wetlands. Surface water availability in the Upper East Coast is also limited due to water resource protections. For example, several surface water bodies such as the C23, C24, and C25 canals are limited by restricted allocation area criteria. In addition, the timing and volume of freshwater discharges, which affect coastal resources, is also an important consideration. Due to the limitations on the superficial aquifer system and surface water sources, more users are beginning to utilize brackish water from the Florida aquifer system, so the long-term availability of the Florida aquifer system is also an important consideration. This was addressed with updates to the East Coast Florida model, and a separate technical methods workshop was held in July to discuss the model results. In addition, we need to be aware of climate change and sea level rise, which are predicted to accelerate in South Florida and could or will have an impact on our water resources. Next slide. It is important to protect and use our water resources at the same time. Once we are set on the demand projections, we inventory the situations that limit the use of the potential water sources. Although surface water is a main source utilized in the Upper East Coast, its expanded use is heavily limited by resource protection. 3 protection methods implemented in the Upper East Coast are minimum flows and minimum water levels, or MFLs, water reservations, and restricted allocation areas. There are 3 MFLs, 1 water reservation, and several restricted allocation areas in the Upper East Coast. The St. Lucie Estuary MFL is the only MFL located entirely in the Upper East Coast planning area. The North Fork of the Waxahachie River and Lake Okeechobee MFL are only partially located within the Upper East Coast planning area, but are fully described in detail in the Lower East Coast Water Supply Plan. There's 1 water reservation, the North Fork of the St. Lucie River, which sets aside water for the protection of fish and wildlife or public health and safety, and several RAAs, which are established for sources where there are water resource limitations. All of these are described in detail in Chapter 4 and Appendix C of the plan as required by statute. Next slide. There are several water source options available to the users in the Upper East Coast. The 2 most widely used traditional sources in the Upper East Coast are surface water bodies such as the C23, C24, and C25 canals, and fresh groundwater from the superficial aquifer system. However, since these traditional sources are limited, there are several alternative sources that are available to meet the additional demands that can't be met by traditional sources. Of these alternative sources, brackish groundwater from the deeper Florida aquifer system is the most widely used in the Upper East Coast planning area. There's also some development of reservoirs that capture excess wet season water flows that would be lost to tide and store this captured water in an on-site reservoir for use in the dry season. In addition, reclaimed water use continues to increase in the Upper East Coast area. Although conservation is not a water source, implementation of conservation will extend the supply of traditional sources. All these sources are described in detail in Chapter 5 of the plan update. Next slide. With all water supply issues, strategies are needed to meet the needs from the different sources. Here are the use categories and sources that can supply demand. Public supply in the Upper East Coast uses primarily fresh and brackish groundwater. However, there are also some opportunities from storage for public supply as well. Domestic self-supply from fresh groundwater in the Upper East Coast. Agriculture utilizes all source but reclaimed, which can't be used on most edible crops. Landscape recreational and power generation in the Upper East Coast utilizes all of the sources. And finally, commercial, industrial, institutional typically uses all but brackish groundwater due to the high treatment costs. Next slide. Okay, Okay, the two groundwater sources utilized in the Upper East Coast are the shallower superficial aquifer system and the deeper Florida aquifer system. As shown in this cross-section, wells must be drilled into the aquifers to withdraw water. The superficial aquifer is fresh, shallower, and less productive in the Upper East Coast. The Florida aquifer system extends much deeper, is very productive, but more brackish than the superficial aquifer system. There are two portions of the Florida aquifer utilized in the Upper East Coast, the shallower, typically less brackish Upper Floridan, and the lower, more productive Avon Park portion. The lower Floridan is not widely used in the Upper East Coast due to its high chloride concentrations, which are costly to treat. Below the lower Floridan is the boulder zone, which extends down 3,000 feet from land surface and can be used for deep well injection purposes. And finally, aquifer storage and recovery wells, which are proposed to be utilized more in the Upper East Coast in the future, involve storing water such as storm water, fresh groundwater, reclaimed water that is injected into the aquifer and withdrawn later for use. Next slide. There are numerous permitted users of fresh groundwater from the superficial aquifer system as shown in the map on the left, and brackish groundwater from the Florida aquifer system, which is shown in the map on the right in the planning area. Public supply and landscape and golf course irrigation are the largest users of the superficial aquifer in the Upper East Coast, especially along the eastern portion of the planning area. Also, there are a fair amount of agricultural users of the superficial aquifer for either livestock drinking water or tank filling. Superficial aquifer is widely used for other smaller uses as well in the planning region due to it being easier to treat and less costly to install wells. Due to limitations on the amount of surface water and the low productivity of the superficial aquifer system, as well as environmental concerns such as wetland impacts, the Florida aquifer system is becoming more widely used in the planning area. Public supply utilities located primarily in the eastern portion of the planning area and agriculture located primarily in the north and western portions of the planning area are the largest users of the Florida aquifer system in the region as shown on the map on the right. 8 of the 15 public supply utilities in the Upper East Coast utilize groundwater from the Florida aquifer system to meet all or a portion of their demands. The majority of agricultural users rely on groundwater from the Florida aquifer system as a backup supply for droughts and freeze protection only. Next slide. Resource evaluations are an important component of water supply planning in determining the availability of sources to meet water needs in the planning area. Some data sources used in the evaluations are water use permit information, regulatory limitations on surface water, groundwater levels and water quality data, demand estimates and projections, as well as groundwater modeling scenarios. The use of the Florida aquifer system is growing in the Upper East Coast due to limitations on surface water and the low production rates and environmental considerations such as wetland impacts for the superficial aquifer system. A minimal increase in superficial aquifer system water use is anticipated through the planning period, and therefore the superficial aquifer system was not modeled. However, the East Coast superficial model is under development, and those results should be ready for the next plan update in 2026. And you can see the outline of the East Coast superficial model on the map on the right. It's the outline that's in blue. As Rob presented earlier, the East Coast Florida model, which is outlined in yellow on the map, was updated with additional geologic data and increased demands of an additional 20 million gallons per day by 2045. The model evaluates the impacts on water levels and water quality due to increased dependency on the Florida aquifer system. Numerous sources of data and information were considered while updating the East Coast Florida model, such as input from planning area stakeholders, analysis and results from the previous water supply plans, local government reporting, water use permits, and hydrologic data from monitoring wells. This data and information are presented in Chapter 6 and Appendix D of the plan update. Next slide. Reclaimed water is another alternative water source used in the Upper East Coast primarily for landscape and golf course irrigation. The bar graph on the left shows that the use of reclaimed water in the Upper East Coast has increased from approximately 5 million gallons per day in 1994 to approximately 8.5 million gallons per day in 2019. The two maps on the left show the locations of the wastewater facilities and associated reclaimed water distribution lines in Martin and St. Lucie counties. According to the 2019 Florida Department of Environmental Protection Annual Reuse Report Inventory, the volume of wastewater used is 9 million gallons per day, which equates to 36% of that wastewater that is treated. There's 15 million gallons per day of potentially reusable water that is being disposed of via deep well injection. Reclaimed use continues to be promoted for new developments, and several utilities are expanding their reclaimed facilities to provide alternative water to meet additional demands in the region. Next slide. As part of the groundwater monitoring analysis, sea level rise and climate change were considered. Sea level rise is occurring on the eastern coast of Florida and is predicted to accelerate. Some ways that the district is preparing for this is by conducting more research and modeling, looking at vulnerable components of the current water management system, and developing management strategies. Also, the district is coordinating with several local governments, agencies, and stakeholders, and actively participating in meetings with other entities that discuss current conditions and plans for the future regarding sea level rise and climate change. In addition, future scenarios will be evaluated using the East Coast Surficial Model. Next slide. Historic monitoring of water levels and water quality are used to analyze the state of the water resource. One of the ways the district analyzes the effects of climate change and sea level rise is the development of saltwater intrusion maps for the east coast of South Florida. Water quality data is collected and analyzed, and maps are updated every 5 years to monitor the inland movement of saltwater. 3 maps have been produced so far. The most current map developed by the district was updated in 2019, and a comparison of the 2 previous maps from 2009 and 2014 shows minimal change in the movement of the interface for the past 15 years in the upper East Coast planning area. In addition, chloride graphs like the one shown on the bottom right are generated by district staff from chloride data submitted by public utilities as part of their permitting requirements. A detailed discussion of climate change, sea level rise, and chloride monitoring efforts performed by the district are provided in Chapter 6 and Appendix D. Next slide. In water supply planning statute, 2 types of projects are identified, which are water resource and water supply development projects. Water supply development projects are the responsibility of users and are discussed in Chapter 8 of the plan update. Water resource development projects, which are discussed in Chapter 7 of the plan update, are larger projects that are the responsibility of the district and serve various purposes in support of managing, protecting, and restoring water resources. Most projects support and enhance water supply development but do not directly yield specific quantities of water. These include environmental restoration, research, grant programs, and protection rules. Some examples of water resource development projects in the Upper East Coast are the implementation of SERP, Indian River Lagoon South projects, and other projects such as the 10 Mile Creek and Lakeside Ranch stormwater treatment area. There's also resource protection rules such as MFLs and RAA rules, hydrogeologic investigations, which include drilling wells, geophysical logging and aquifer tests, groundwater monitoring of aquifer levels and quality, and modeling such as the East Coast Florida model update for this plan and the East Coast Surficial model, which is currently under development, as well as various alternative water supply and conservation programs, which are summarized in Chapter 7 of the plan update. Next slide. As previously mentioned, there are 2 types of projects and water supply plans. We have already described water resource development projects, and now we will discuss water supply development projects, which are primarily the responsibility of the water users. In Chapter 8, we provide information on proposed water supply development projects to meet future needs. Overall, for this plan update, there are 16 proposed water supply development projects. In comparing the 2045 projected demands with existing treatment capacities and allocations, most utilities have existing allocations to meet the projected needs. There are a total of 8 potable projects proposed by 4 utilities. This includes projects such as construction of wells, reverse osmosis water treatment plants, and these projects provide flexibility and diversification of sources. Only one of the 15 utilities in the Upper East Coast was identified as needing future projects to meet their 2045 demands. However, several utilities have proposed to construct projects for a variety of reasons, such as to increase capacity or spread wells out for a better distribution. There's also 8 non-potable projects proposed by 4 utilities. These include things like construction of reclaimed water mains and water storage areas. These are the 8 projects I will show you in the next slide and are for irrigation for reclaimed water expansion. Next slide, please. To summarize, in the Upper East Coast planning area, there are 16 proposed water supply projects from various sources. The majority of projects are proposed by public supply utilities. These projects are expected to create an additional 83 million gallons per day of capacity. And just to summarize, there are 7 potable projects from the Florida Aquifer system and one surface water project, and 3 surface water, 4 reclaimed water, and 1 ASR non-potable project. Next slide. I'm sorry, hold on just one second. My computer just went out and I can't see it. Hold on. Sorry about that. Okay, the future direction includes to continue implementation of monitoring programs as well as conservation programs, alternative water supply development projects, and the continuation of SERP and other ecosystem restoration projects. In order to evaluate, monitor, and design solutions for sea level rise and climate trends, we are anticipating completing the East Coast superficial model, and those results should be ready for the next plan update. We also need to implement long-term management measures for the Florida Aquifer system in coordination with utilities, since there is an increasing demand for in the Florida Aquifer system use. It's important that we continue to work with utilities and other entities in managing how they utilize the Florida Aquifer system. And finally, we coordinate with other agencies, local governments, such as St. Johns River Water Management District, local governments, and other utilities on water supply elements. Next slide. And in conclusion, the future water needs can be met through 2045 with appropriate management, conservation, and implementation of projects. And those projects include the construction of potable water supplies, development projects by one public supply utility, and the implementation of SERP Indian River Lagoon South Project and other ecosystem restoration projects. Next slide. So our next steps, August 25th, the draft documents were posted, and today we're holding our last stakeholder meeting. On September 9th, we will be doing a presentation of the draft plan to the governing board. And on October 1st is the deadline for external comments. November 10th, we plan on taking the final plan to the governing board for consideration of approval. And that's, next slide. And that concludes my presentation, and I'll be happy to answer any questions at this time. And also my email and phone number up there. If you have any comments that you want to send to me, please send them via email. And if you have any questions, you can feel free to call me.
Okay, thank you, Nancy. That was a really good summary of the draft water supply plan. I see that, Jackie, you have your hand raised. You have some questions?
Yes, I apologize for asking so many questions today, but I feel like it's my last chance, really. And I encourage anyone else on the Zoom call today who wants to ask questions to ask them. Nancy, I loved your presentation. I did want to ask about water reuse, and just because this is being recorded. I would like it on the record that water reuse is a wonderful thing, and that's absolutely how we should be moving in the future. However, there are problems, concerns with the high levels of nutrients in those waters. And sometimes those waters make their way right back to our St. Lucie River, Indian River Lagoon, and other water bodies of the state. And our waters are being destroyed by nutrient pollution that we have to get a hold on. Right now, I know this doesn't apply to where we are, but we suffer from the same thing in the St. Lucie River, Indian River Lagoon, where I am from. But like, I'm getting right ready to go through Melbourne, where all these manatees are dying specifically. And it's because of the lack of light, the nutrient pollution adds to the poor water quality and clarity. And so I too am super proud of the purple pipes, and I've been explaining to my husband what they are and what they mean. But I hope that we can address the hard questions about nutrient pollution in some of those reused waters going right back into the water bodies we're trying to protect. Otherwise, loved your presentation. Such good work. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate your comments, Jackie. It appears Jake also has his hand raised. If we could unmute Jake, go ahead.
Sure, thank you all. This is Jake Voitic with the Florida Farm Bureau Federation. I appreciate the opportunity to briefly speak on water supply issues concerning agriculture in the Upper East Coast area. I want to thank everybody for your presentations and everybody on the call for all the hard work and efforts. I know that projections regarding water supply is a pretty difficult task, to put it lightly. I just want to remind everyone that agricultural water use is unique and different, especially in this area. When there's adequate and above average rainfall, agriculture acts as a major source of recharge and storage. Alternatively, during dry periods, irrigation is critical. I do want to briefly highlight that while there may be a decrease in overall irrigated acres due to citrus greening and urbanization, the change of land use from citrus to other agricultural commodities like vegetable production could result in changes in water needs for the industry in the future. Another area of concern for many of us is the source of the water supply. Allocations for the use of the fluoride may not be helpful in meeting future agricultural needs because of the high chlorides. Vegetable production specifically is very susceptible to that. Consequently, surface water and superficial groundwater supplies are even more critical in sustaining the future industry needs throughout the area. As all y'all do, including myself, we all eat, and agriculture is critical in providing food security for Florida, for our nation, and all around the world. So thank you for the opportunity to speak, and I appreciate all the hard work that everybody's putting in.
Okay, thank you for your comment. Very nice. Are there any other questions for Nancy about the draft water supply plan update? Not seeing any hands raised at this point. We'll wait a little bit in case somebody thinks of a question and is trying to unmute themselves or raise their hand. That was a lot of information. I would think that somebody would have a couple of questions, but I'm not seeing any hands raised at this point. So I guess we can wrap it up at this point. If nobody has any other questions or concerns. Oh, okay. It's just a phone number. I don't have a name ending in 5372. You might have to *6 to unmute your line.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. Can you hear me? Yes. This is
Yes.
Drew Martin with the Sierra Club. I just had a question about water quality. And I know in one of the initial presentations you mentioned ASR and you mentioned surficial water. And I'm just curious what sort of treatments may be required. We know in Palm Beach County, they had problems with the surficial water with the West Palm Beach. So I'm just curious if you have plans to do any kind of water quality treatments, both pre-treat if you put water into an ASR, and also just what sort of treatments may be required with some of the water that you're going to be using.
Are you asking the district that question, or are you asking the utility that question that is proposing ASR wells?
Well, I'm just curious in your presentation today, if when you're looking at water supply, if you're taking into account that there may be issues with water quality and how that might impact water supply. I guess I'm asking the different question.
Okay, the water supply plan doesn't address water quality issues since it's really about supply. However, DEP certainly has programs in place for a utility that's going to use aquifer storage and recovery. It has to be treated to appropriate standards prior to injection into the aquifer. And after it's withdrawn back out, it also has to be treated for the intended use. If it's intended to be used for drinking water supply, it has to be treated to drinking water standards. And that's the underground injection control program by DEP that would handle that permit and permit requirements. Did that answer your question?
Yes, that's fine. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, any other questions or comments about the draft plan? I don't see any hands raised at this point, but I want to give enough time for people to think of questions and raise their hand if you have questions. Okay, I'm not seeing any hands raised at this point. Still. Okay. Again, not seeing any hands raised or for questions or comments. So I think we can wrap up the workshop at this point. I want to thank you again to our presenters, our panelists, and governing board member, and everyone who's joined us today and participated in today's workshop. I also want to remind people that in a few days following the workshop, this workshop recording will be made available on the district's website. And I want to thank everybody and hope everyone has a great afternoon.